Hey folks, Reloading Bench back with you once again. We are back on track with the 416 Barrett. In fact, I finally received my two-stage trigger. And if you look at the date of when it was manufactured, 4/22/2016, what's today? And a monthish, about 2 weeks ago. So I've been waiting on this. I ordered this on January 5th of this year. So just under 4 months, longest I've ever waited for. Well, I can't say that. I've waited a long time for this. So hopefully tonight we will put that fire control group into this lower. Got my handy dandy tools, punch, a hammer, some Delrin for the trigger, or rather hammer against trigger, and then see what kind of pull we're getting. I'm thinking this is going to be about a 5.5 pound pull, and I wanted a two-stage, but I didn't want a super light trigger considering the weight of this particular overall gun when it's done, as well as the kick. So after reading through some of the instructions for this two-stage trigger, I'm going to just dump this in my bin. These bins come in handy. I'm a bin fan. I thought it was interesting that in reference to the actual hammer and trigger pin, they talk about your oversize trigger pin. And I'm not a fan of an oversized trigger pin because that means I would be doing some oversizing to these holes, and not up for that. So we will not be using these two pins. So those go back in the bag. What we will be using, however, is, if I don't drop it out, especially the small screws, is this particular set of hammer and trigger pins that have screws on the ends to prevent walking. So accomplishing something similar using a slightly different approach. So I'll dump all that out, and very simple. Things essentially come almost pre-configured. This will go into the gun just like that, and this will go in like that with the spring forward against the top of this. So essentially like so. That's where you get your tension from. All right, so I looked at this a little earlier, and I do not have to take out the safety. Yay, because I've seen instances where when you do replace a trigger, you have issues with the safety. And I'm just going to pre-fit these. Looks like those have a great fit already, so that will not be a problem. All right. So the trigger would be relatively easy, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm sure my hand's going to be in the way somewhat. Springs go forward, the legs of the spring go forward. And let's see if I can get that in here for you. And essentially that just drops in. And I will maneuver this around just enough to be able to line that up on the other side. So forgive me while I'm out of screen here. There we go. So we're essentially lined up. We're on fire. Safe should block. Fire gives me a little more play. So we'll go to safe. I'm not going to worry about screwing the screws in right at this minute. And This, you'll see, comes like this from the factory. A lot of people mistakenly have this against the back of your fire control group area on the lower, and actually it needs to flip around and come on the inside, because that's where you're going to get your tension from. Alright, so this one's going to be a little trickier because there is more tension on it. So essentially I'm going to drop this in with the legs to the back, laying on top of I'm going to try and line that up, and it would probably help if I had the correct alignment. Lots of tension. Yeah, I missed it. So maybe what makes sense is to come at it so that I almost have it, and pop that in. Once I put a little more pressure on it, pretty close. Oh, so close. And we missed it. There we go. This is where a plastic tip hammer comes in great. And it always is going to be slightly off just because of the pressure. So this is where wiggle comes in. And I've found that the easiest way to kind of align that is to put the trigger down a little. And obviously I don't want to let it snap up against the back like that. I don't want to do that because that damages things. So the easiest way to prevent that, and something that I probably should have put in first as I was anticipating, and it's going to be a tight fit just because. There we go. And that's probably not going to work because that's more for an AR. So we'll test on safe, and it fires. All right. So this is not so functional on this particular device, but since this is a solid block, I think we're okay. So we are good. is about 3.5 pounds maybe. And why don't we test that? So we've got a trigger pull. Set to fire. My hand is blocking the hammer. Okay, so that's the first stage, and it looks like we're at little over 2.5. And we're going to take this to fire. Six and a quarter pounds for this particular 2-stage trigger. So we'll try that one more time. And we're at 6 and change. So not a significant difference from what I would call a mil spec. Sure doesn't feel like 6 after you're on that second stage. Okay, so I call that almost done, and we'll make it truly done by putting these little tiny as hell screws in. And if you notice, it already started to walk on the trigger. All right, so if you can see that. Tiny, tiny, tiny little set screws that I will get started. And flip it over to the other side. Time for a little break. And one more. Okay, so those are in, and we will tighten. So there's enough play that the pin can move, but these screws aren't going anywhere. So I would call that 2 and done instead of 1 and done. So there's a 2.5, 3 pound first stage, back. Very nice. Cool. All right, we are done. Thanks, guys. See you when the next piece comes in.